When looking at historical military might, there is no better example than the European knights. They were experts in siege warfare and masters of sword combat with an array of other weapons at their disposal. But they also had incredible battle tactics, such as outnumbering their enemy. Watch carefully here as the European knights fend off a horde of Mongol invaders, outnumbering them 2 to 1. There is no possible way they could lose. The Mongolian Empire was the biggest continuous land empire in history, accomplished by their military might and ability to dominate the battlefield even in disadvantageous situations. Given their clear military prowess at the time, how did the Mongols fight? How were their tactics and methods superior to those they faced?
Under Genghis Khan's guidance, the Mongols established a vast and varied empire that stretched throughout Asia and Europe. However, what made them unique was their capacity to accept and assimilate diverse cultures, faiths, and military tactics. The Mongol Empire, as we can see, spanned enormous amounts of territory and was home to a wide range of diverse cultures. The Mongol Empire was unique in that it not only accepted but actively celebrated diversity, which distinguished them from many other conquerors. Furthermore, this tolerance for various cultures was both a tactical necessity and a virtue. The Mongol Art of War by Timothy May highlights the importance of this cultural tolerance. In order to create a powerful and flexible military force, May claims that the Mongols assimilated the military tactics and tactics of the people they had subjugated. According to May, the Mongols combined the most effective elements of different military traditions to create a dynamic combination of strategies that confused their enemies. By gathering all the knowledge from conquered forces, the Mongols could form a military force that was not constrained by a single doctrine, and rather one that capitalized on the weaknesses of its enemies. The Mongols were able to overcome the constraints of the conventional military thinking thanks to their innovative strategy. Throughout their vast empire, the Mongols maintained their strength and agility despite other empires struggling with inflexible strategies that frequently proved outdated in the face of changing threats. Additionally, an aspect which was crucial to the Mongols' military expansion was that they recruited conquered soldiers and turned them into their own. According to Timothy May, a great amount of the Mongols' forces were ones who had either once fought against the Mongols or who had surrendered. Unlike numerous conquerors who merely enlisted enemy soldiers, May suggests that the soldiers integrated into the Mongol Empire authentically and did not perceive themselves as being dominated. Consequently, these soldiers fought with a genuine belief in the ideals of the Mongol Empire. This sense of belief and belonging contributed greatly to the Mongol military expansion.
Besides the benefits of recruiting people from conquered areas, the Mongols also benefited heavily from the land itself. The Mongols began as a decentralized and nomadic tribe who lived based off of the needs of their horses. This close tie between the Mongols and their horses made up some of the key methods in Mongol tactics, since they could count on being more skilled on horseback than almost all of their adversaries. Horseback archery in particular was used to provide good range and mobility for their forces, which overpowered their opponents. One of the biggest reasons for the Mongol success in mounted combat were the horses themselves. The steppe horses were much smaller than their sedentary counterparts. Though this did mean they were slower, they made up for it in their agility and reliability in battle. Mongol horses also came in greater numbers, which was mostly because they were able to live off grass instead of grain, making the Mongolian steppe the ideal region for raising them. With basic grasslands able to sustain their horses for a relatively long period of time, each rider could have up to 5 horses as backups for extended combat. This also meant that Mongols struggled in less open terrain such as jungle, where they were forced to bring smaller forces to be able to sustain a longer battle. Besides the horses, the Mongol archers themselves were not so much trained as they were grown. Because of the need to hunt, the vast majority of Mongol archers had a lifetime of experience. As such, they had incredible accuracy as well as greater stamina while on horseback. The ranged combat-based strategy also allowed the Mongols to circumvent one of their biggest weaknesses, a lack in resources and ability to make armors or weapons, which is the main reason for their limited use of heavy cavalry. Overall, the combination of effective horses and deadly accurate archers led to a clear skill-based advantage. Now the only question was how to press it. The answer to that came in the form of terrain. As generals knew their mobility and range on horseback was one of, if not the biggest win condition for them, they figured Mongol armies would be naturally favored in terrain with large and open areas. In grasslands or plains, they were able to use their range advantage to slowly whittle down enemy numbers and morale until their opponents made a mistake. The Mongols found success this way by actively seeking out optimal terrain. An example of this is present in the Battle of Mohi, where General Sube'etei used the tactic of feigned retreat to lead the Hungarian army into an open plain, giving the Mongols an immediate advantage. The retreat was made possible mostly by the Mongol stamina on horseback, allowing them to gain much more ground and slowly tire out their opponents before the battle had even begun. Examples of Mongol strategy he built around terrain is found in most, if not all, of their battles, mainly facilitated by good communication and a superior ability to execute advanced tactics.
Another important factor to their success, and a tactic which they used to their advantage, was their reputation. A reputation of them being brutal and massacring entire towns. The Mongols were considered as brutal and ruthless. There's a reason as to why they got this reputation. According to Khan Academy, there are stories to tell of the Mongols winning battles where they would just slaughter everyone and loot all the houses. This spread across the Eurasian continent. This helped their pursuit forward and their quick conquering, as some towns would now not even put up a fight and would surrender to the Mongols. If the enemy didn't surrender though, the Mongols' reputation at least demoralized them before the fight had even begun. The Mongols were not so interested in governing the cities and trying to hold the ground which they had covered. They wanted to conquer. The way they would keep cities under control and still within the empire was through tribute. The people would pay tribute or money, taxes, to the Mongols, and in return get protection from outside forces. This tribute was also a way of putting pressure on their enemies. In the Mongolian Empire, assemblies were held where leaders were chosen and decisions were made. This was done to showcase their power and strength. The Mongols would also use spies as a way of infiltrating their enemies and in a sense creating disarray and confusion within the enemies. When a battle had been won and the town taken over, the Mongols would slaughter a lot of the inhabitants, but also leave some alive. They would leave some alive so that the survivors would spread the word of what the Mongols were like and what they were doing. These survivors would be a key reason as to why the Mongols' reputation spread like it did, as well as the reason why it would help them in battle. Their reputation was a tactic that they used. They would tactically choose to slaughter cities to instill fear in the enemy, using their slaughtering of the enemy as a way of creating unease within the rest of them, making their next battle easier.
What set the Mongols apart from all their contemporary foes were their innovative military strategies and tactics. These revolutionary new tactics, strategies, and overall approach to warfare, conquest, and battle were vastly different to those used by the established powers of the time. During its heyday, the Mongol army used military tactics which proved superior to European, Chinese, and Middle Eastern forces, allowing them to conquer vast areas of Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. Their tactics relied on mobility, trickery, and preparation. The Mongols' readiness for battle before ever facing the enemy was a major factor in their military conquests. Traveling merchants, priests, and defectors were among the spies who gathered information on the enemy's strengths and vulnerabilities prior to any battle or engagement. Many of their opponents relied on mass infantry and relatively few heavily armored cavalry, meaning they would move into battle as one large, relatively immobile group. A large majority of those the Mongols faced also had the idea of an honest or honorable battle. Their idea of a fair fight was two armies meeting at a predetermined battlefield and clashing head-on. However, the Mongols had no concern for honesty or honor in battle if they emerged victorious. And as previously mentioned, they found that cunning tactics and traps were the most effective in warfare. One such trap is commonly referred to as the feigned flight, where they would scout a terrain and identify a place where troops could be concealed. Once battle commenced, a Mongol force could pretend to be in a state of disarray, riding away in a panic from a seeming lost cause. In most armies of the time, this kind of retreat would imply a lost battle, and the opposing troops would see an opportunity to pursue and massacre the fleeing forces. This meant leaving their organized positions to chase their enemy. The disorganized enemy troops would be led to a point where the fleeing Mongols would turn around and start attacking from the front, while the previously concealed units could spring their trap and attack from the flank. If the opposing troops remained in formation, the Mongols could simply pull away and ravage the surrounding country, disheartening the forces by slaughtering entire towns and cutting off the army's supply to resources. The feigned flight technique was used against Eastern European powers in both the Battle of Hunan and the Battle of the Khalkha River, both of which the Mongols emerged victorious from. The Mongolian battle tactics maximized their agile advantage and minimized the need for prolonged close-quarter combat. Another deceitful tactic which was commonly used by the Mongolians was the caracol, where waves of Mongolian archers would ride in the direction of their enemies, raining arrows on them as they approached. The wave would pull back at a set distance as the riders would turn in their saddles, firing arrows backwards, the famed Parthian shot. The wave would fall back out of distance for the men to rest and remount as another wave would ride towards the enemy. The rain of arrows on the enemy never ceased. This process of riders approaching in waves would continue however many times necessary. It was a form of psychological warfare against their opponent as much as it was physical. Seeing seemingly endless waves of archers continuously attacking is disheartening and instills fear in the opponent, which is something the Mongolians took full advantage of.
In conclusion, Mongol strategies and methods were superior both on and off the battlefield. Through their ideal geography for horses and their tolerance, which allowed them to constantly add new troops and tactics to their arsenal, they were able to make a near-perfect war machine. Once on the battlefield, intelligent commanders and generals worked to maximize their advantages while minimizing their weaknesses, which combined well with their adaptability and ability to learn new types of warfare or use different weapons. By keeping their enemy at a constant disadvantage, the Mongols were one of the most powerful armies of all time, with tactics that are studied to this day. Had the death of the Khan not stopped their campaign in Europe, the world may look a whole lot different today.